if any. And you're welcome to address anyone up at the table or others here. Are there any questions? And I would ask if you have a question, please go to the microphone and indicate if you're a shareholder.
Just a couple of questions. For those who don't know who I am, I've worked with Ian starting in 2002 when I first met Dick. My name's Greg Gooch. I have an electrical engineering degree and an MBA. Been financing new technologies for 40 years, and I think I know a fair amount about the rose-colored glasses on the part of inventors, the wish list, and the reality. Given that ZENN now controls 70% or a few more of eStore, I don't quite understand why eStore does not have a direct representative on the board. Your board is unchanged from last year. And whether it's Dick himself on the board or whoever he appoints, or the Weir family appoints, it seems to me that that's something that would help shareholder values. I say this because a number of press releases have come out that contain a certain amount of information. This last press release is a very good example. That does not paint the picture properly in my view. I was down there in September when TESCOM did their testing along with Roger. We sat there looking at the results. We had a chance to talk to TESCOM. TESCOM is a U.S. certified ANSI specialist in testing. And it's not like they came from the local Radio Shack. These guys know their business and they operate across the U.S. So their results have a high degree of credibility. What they came up with, whether you believe it or not, and predicated on Dick's power-in system, would indicate capacitance well into the multi-tens of thousands, in fact, in one case up into the millions. Simultaneously, while those results were somewhat questionable in the eyes of some people, Dick realized that he would have to show that he could measure, he can measure the power in. As importantly was to be able to measure the power out, because you can put power into anything, but if it doesn't stay there, it does no good. So he developed and completed this power out system in January. And as I understand it, it confirms within a few percentage points the power in. It seems to me that this kind of approach on Dick's part has been, I'm not going to say completely ignored, but the public doesn't know about it. And it is a hugely material fact. He's demonstrating energy storage, not quite what the target is, but energy storage that is going up on a sample-by-sample basis. You use the example of the tests that were run recently by the tech as an indication he wasn't even close on permittivity. Well, the thing that Dick does with the measuring the capacitance at frequency is to determine whether or not that particular layer has improved or regressed from the previous layer. He uses it strictly as an indicator. He tests from 100 cycles down to wherever the reads moderately properly. In every case, the capacitance from 100 hertz down to 10 hertz or less has gone up by a factor of at least 5. This is a significant result from 2 points of view. It indicates the fact that the powders are in the paraelectric phase. If you test the conventional capacitor the same way, you'll have a flat line. The second indication that comes out of it is if the increase in capacitance is greater than a certain factor, it also indicates how well the sample is testing for polarity. So in summary, if you take some of the results that you publish and you take the frequency measurements down to, if you can't get a good reading at 10, take it down to 15. There you will get a good reading, and it will show a dramatic improvement. Having said that, I just had a look at the numbers and extrapolated using more or less the same parameters that became apparent under the TESCOM results, and it would tend to indicate a permittivity for DC storage, not AC. There's no storage in AC. In DC, his test samples were probably going to come out at in the hundreds of thousands of permittivity, and I suspect that a reasonable voltage level would have energy density certainly into the hundreds of watt hours per liter. At any rate, it seems to me the problem is communication, and what's happening at Dick's level and in his mind does not seem to be reflected at all in the actions or the publication by ZENN. And to me, if you want transparency, you have to have him represented on the board and probably review every press release before it goes out. If he completely disagrees with it, then his disagreement should also be put in the press release, because the investors are not getting the story. I know Dick is not an easy guy to work with. He can be a giant pain in the patootie, but he's no dummy. And as Jim says, he works like a bloody Trojan. So I'm very keen to see ZENN and eStore work more collaboratively. It's got to be more transparent, and Dick needs all the bloody help he can get. So I'll leave it in your hands.
I think the question was why Dick isn't on the board, but the dialogue was beyond that. So let me start with the specific question. We actually have formed a board at eStore, which is really the company doing the work, and both Tom and Dick are on the board. And to the extent strategy for eStore, direction, partnerships are dealt with, that's all something that is to be dealt with, and to date has been dealt with at the eStore board level and will continue to be. Putting Dick on the public company board is something that we don't necessarily think adds value. We wanted to focus on the eStore work, and eStore now is a consolidated subsidiary of ZENN. It doesn't change the interaction. He's still Chief Science Officer of eStore, and we do not send out press releases, as a matter of fact, without him seeing them in advance, including the ones. Doesn't mean he has to agree with the tone. We have different perspectives and objectives as a public company, and the board of ZENN has set a very strict guideline that we're only going to publish facts. We're not going to put out things where we can't substantiate them. And to your broader point, the science is complex. You're absolutely right. And that's why we are incredibly lucky to have 5 people who really we pay a pittance to work on the technical advisory committee. They are emailing and talking on a daily basis, most of them. Only 3 formal meetings, but there is not 48 hours that go by where they aren't communicating. On that committee, we have one of the world's most respected experts in testing and measurement, and it is the unanimous view of that, and an unequivocal view of that committee, that measuring energy in is not a reliable way to measure energy stored. And that if you want to measure energy stored, you have to measure what comes out. It's the analogy I've used is it's like going to a gas station and saying, putting the gas pump in, or the nozzle in your tank and saying, look, I just put in 50 liters, 10 bit gallons for those and whatever, and saying, therefore, I store, 50 liters. But if there's a hole in the bottom of your gas tank and there's a big puddle when you drive away, you didn't store it. So we know, and the TAC is very firm on this, that the only way they're going to be comfortable backing disclosure on what's stored is by actually measuring what you can take out of something. So we're really focused on that, and I think there's actually no disagreement. Dick has worked hard. He's reprogrammed his Yokogawa so that it's now capable of doing that. Even then, the challenge in convincing outsiders, and we've seen convincing the TAC, it's a mirror of what we need to do to convince our partners, is that any device that has, quote, software in it is subject to difficulty understanding. So you need to be able to back it up with a second type of testing, and we're working to develop that. Right now, the layers that have been recently developed don't have enough of the characteristics to store a meaningful amount of energy that the debate of what it stores and whether it's in or out is even relevant. You need to get both the capacitance and the resistivity up to levels. If it's going to leak out in a second, it's sort of academic whether it stores it. In the current layers, we're talking about a couple of seconds. On your issue of measuring below the 100 hertz level and down closer to what Dick or you might describe as lower frequency, more indicative of what it might do at DC. I'm not an engineer or I'm not a science person, so I'm probably the last person in this room who should even be answering this question. But the TAC's answer is that, again, unanimous, unambiguous on the point, that as you start bringing the frequency below 100, they believe the reliability and the meaningfulness of the test deteriorates dramatically, such that it is not either, it's not a test that has any, in their view, information that you can take out of it. It does not indicate, you can't just simply extrapolate. And so, rightly or wrongly, 5 people, including, as I said, one of the most renowned experts in the world on the topic, does not believe that you can do that and simply extrapolate. So they don't believe that that's an accurate way of determining capacitance. Roger, do you want to, since I'm way out of my field, take the mic? Roger Hammack. Did I describe that correctly?
I think you basically described it correctly. The TAC is unanimous that they don't believe that some of these measurements accurately describe things. And one of the other issues is with regards to the LCR meter. The L stands for inductor. Don't ask me why that the L stands for inductance. And C is capacitance and R is resistance.